How about progression? Is this just concerning the degrees?
In a practical sense, I suppose, yes, it is, because you join the order to progress through degrees, but we want people to feel a sense of progression in every part of their life. So it's as broadly applied as it needs to be.
How long does it take to progress through the degrees?
Again, as I said before, that's how long is a piece of string question. It depends on how in harmony somebody is with a particular degree, how quickly it takes them to master its mysteries. It depends also on the arrangements of the lodge, the logistic arrangements of being able to supply a date for the degree to be passed. There are lots of factors that might affect how quickly or how slowly someone progresses through the degrees, but I think the most important thing is that they feel that they've mastered and absorbed everything that that degree has to offer them, and that they feel, on top of that, a readiness to try to move on to the next one.
How do you assess a member's readiness for the next degree?
There are certain modes of assessment. I won't declare them openly, but they are performed on different levels. There's obviously the intellectual assessment, whether somebody understands the symbols in reference to what they've already learned, whether somebody is showing progression in their intellectual understanding of the rituals, in their exploration, in their study, but there are other things as well.
Does every new degree require a new lecture to be written by the member, or are there other criteria?
For the first 3 degrees, yes, we always require a lecture to be written to show advancement, and for some of the first few higher degrees it may be required as well. But as you go through the degrees, other things may be required of you that are broader than just the lecture. We might need to see that you've performed certain tasks or have developed certain techniques to a level of competence. It depends on the degree and what level it's working on.
Are your members allowed to stay in any degree they choose if they are comfortable and content there?
Yes, they can.
How do you manage differences in ability and competence?
As sensitively as we can. I think some people have a natural talent for one thing and some for another. And I think it's important to try, as master of a lodge, to get people to use their strengths first. After a while, though, I think people discover that they can develop skill sets that they didn't think that they had by going into different roles. And that's one of the great things about Masonic Lodge, that you move through the officer roles and you might discover that you have a better talent for organising yourself, or for teaching people, or for taking command of boundaries than you previously would have thought.
Do you have specific entry requirements for your higher degrees or inner orders?
Yes, we do, and these vary.
Do you allow visitors to your higher degree ceremonies?
Very, very rarely. So rarely, in fact, that I would say no, we don't. Generally speaking, the only visitors that would be in any of our sanctuary meetings would be people who were members of the same rite, and better still, the same order.
How fluid is progression through the offices of the EMO UK? Could anyone become the Grand Master, for instance?
Because of the way the Egyptian constitution works, no one can become the Grand Master General. That's a role you have for life. So your duty then, as I said before, is to find a protege and actually train that person up to take over when you retire or you pass away. But all the other roles can vary. Someone can move from one to another. The Master of a Lodge can occupy the chair for 3 years maximum, and then they have to give that up for somebody else. All of the roles in a lodge, the wardens, etc., change once a year at least. Sometimes when someone can't turn up to a meeting, another brother or sister will take their place. So people always have to be ready to fulfil an office, even if it isn't something they've been formally given by the master, if there are problems with personnel. And in the higher degrees, it's kind of the same thing. So the only role that cannot change is mine. And generally speaking, when you have a grand council of people of degrees in the 90s or so forth, that tends not to change as readily because it's very hard to get up to that level. and it's very hard to find people who can operate there. So generally you will have a council that's quite stable and people will stay there for their whole lives. But any of the other roles, yes, of course, they swap and change regularly, and they should, because people need to learn different aspects of the rite and different responsibilities therein.
Do you admit honorary members or convey the high degrees honoris causa for exceptional persons?
It has been known to happen. Generally speaking, I wouldn't convey a higher degree on anyone who wasn't, first of all, a Mason who had the degree just below that, and certainly not someone who hadn't become a member of this order. You do get people who can try to offer you a great deal of money for higher degrees, which you have to constantly say no to. For me, though, I wouldn't really be comfortable conveying a high degree to someone who wasn't actually supporting and assisting the order, because that's the whole point. We're not a degree factory. So someone who did receive a degree for their honorary works in the mysteries, say there was someone who was a highly published author or a very experienced occultist or a very experienced Mason who perhaps hasn't gone above a certain degree level, but that can be conveyed to them, they're quite clearly ready for it. They would have to be people who then decided they wanted to join our order and support our works before I conveyed anything to them.
As I understand it, the practical degrees of the rite formally stop at the 90th degree. Once this dizzying height is reached, where else is there to go? The administrative roles notwithstanding.
Well, with the administrative roles, there are rituals and techniques that are attributed to them. So actually the work does go on beyond the 90th. The rite itself officially stops at the 19th, which is the Arcana Arcanorum. And by that time, you would have really mastered a great deal. But beyond that, really, it's your relationship with the divine that doesn't have a ceiling. There are multiple things to explore, things that you become responsible for doing for others as well. So it isn't necessarily just about you anymore, if at all. And there are rites that are specific to the highest degrees of the Ark and the Sanctuary that members of the degrees above 90 will have to be involved in. So the work does continue, but it continues on a much, much higher and much more select level.
Do you conceive of the order as the earthly branch of a spiritual hierarchy?
I think it aims to be, and I think when an order functions well and its egregore is pure, that's exactly what it is. And I would love the EMO UK to function in that way. But that's as broad as it's long. It depends on the commitment and the purity of intention of all of its members. But assuming that's in place, yes, I think that's exactly what it is.
Thank you, Grandmaster.